on Instagram and on YouTube at the same time. So hopefully I got this all set up right. So a couple things. Let's pick right back up where we left off last Monday. So Monday prior was basically Anatomy of a Workout 101. And so what we did in that day was we kind of lined up the 6 things that we focus on for everybody's program. So, and I guess I should put a little caveat on this one too, right? Like we pretty much put everybody that comes through our programming through that lens, right? So it's a more performance-based lens. It's definitely more movement-based and dialed in and specific to what that person needs. But at the end of the day, that structure and that system, it works on a lot of different levels. And I don't want to get into the bits and pieces of it today, but basically it works in specific energy systems, and that's what makes it work. So physiologically, that's why it makes sense. So that's structurally why we put those things together in that order. So let's do a real quick review. So last week, 101 was our dynamic warm-up. And again, we didn't go into any detail on any of these points. We just laid them out there, right? And moving ahead, you kind of see where this is going. We will delve into every single one of those components. And then today we'll delve into every single component that we touched too. So it just kind of spider webs out from our foundational set, which is Anatomy of Workout 101. So we did, the 6 components were our dynamic warm-up. They were our plyometrics. They were strength, auxiliary, so all of our complementary exercises, conditioning and work capacity. So those are our 5, and then a warm down, so mobility ending. So, and then we broke it down in how structurally that looks in a single workout. So what I wanted to do today was say, okay, we've got our 6 pieces. Now what's that look like? How do I put that into a week, right? And so in order to answer that question, I got to ask a couple more questions. So the first thing that I would look at is, and let's just think systematically, you're let's say high school or collegiate athlete, and whether you're stuck in quarantine right now or not, it doesn't matter. You are either in season or off season, right? So let's think about it that way. So let's put ourselves in those shoes. So let's say you're off season and you would need to focus on strength, and you need to focus on your explosiveness, and you need to focus on your sprint times, your sprint mechanics, right? In season, we can't focus on those things. In season is all about maintenance. It's all about injury reduction. It's more about mobility and practicality and intensity. So those are all things that you got to take into play as you get into season. I'll give you a case in point just because I know it. I'm football, right? So I'm an ex-high school college football player. I know this. I know the system and the seasons, and I know the ebbs and the flows. So when we're in season, it is virtually impossible to work out at a high intensity, right? So liken that to your life. Like how would that work out in your life? If you have a huge project coming up and you've got a lot of things going on your plate, it's really, really hard to work at a very high intensity for very long. Or it's a little bit easier structurally to work at a very high intensity for a very short amount of time, say 15 to 20 minute intervals every single day. I think that's achievable and doable, but again, it depends on where you are and what we're trying to get out of your workout. So I thought today we'd say, okay, look, I'm going to be a high school soccer player, and I need to start prepping for season, right? So from my standpoint, this is a great time to get stronger, get more explosive, do some conditioning, but generally conditioning would not be a big concern of mine right now as I'm looking into season. Especially as it relates to August. I mean, it's April, so we'll talk conditioning in June, July. Right now, I'm working on explosivity and a little bit of muscle strength, or strength and power, sorry. So I would personally break that down into essentially like a 4-day cycle. And that 4-day cycle, I would use my components that we went over last week. I'll draw it on the board. Hopefully you can see it. Again, on the back side here, what I usually do is I'll type it in to the description of the video so that it kind of makes sense. If you're watching it, you can read something and go along with it beside it. But all of these are basically curriculum-based and template-based that I've already written and created. So if you're interested in checking them out, let me know. Have never had anybody ask me that, but if you are interested, let me know. So what would that look like, right? So high school soccer player, I'm going to work on a 4-day interval. And in that 4-day interval, and I say 4 days, and I'm going to do this. I'm going to go left to right. Day 1, day 2, day 3, and day 4. So I'm definitely old school. I still love the chalkboards, man. There's something to them. So as I lay out my 4-day program, all right, I want to think about upper body, lower body. How do I put all this stuff together, right? So let's not worry about the exercises today. Let's just think structurally about how I would start to piece this together. Soccer players, what do soccer players need, right? They're a good mixture of aerobic and anaerobic. They're a good combination of speed, agility, but long distance running. So they've got this really unique mixture of all of these things that need to be trained concurrently. Now, here's my argument. My argument is that their strength training component is not strengthened as much as it needs to be. So it's more conditioning based than strength based. As a strength coach, if I'm running a soccer club, my biggest thing that I want to make sure of is that I've got strong athletes that will be more resilient to injury, resistant to injury, that are explosive and dynamic and that have really good fluid body control, right? So we do not need to put 20 pounds of muscle on this guy because he's not blocking at the line of scrimmage. It's a different sport. If he's a tight end going into college, yeah, I would like this kid to have another 20 pounds on his frame because that's more injury resistant in football, American. In soccer, I want to think about explosiveness and power. So I would definitely focus on improved mechanics. I would focus on improved ranges of motion. Commonly what I see a lot of, and again, this is I'm imagining somebody in my head. I'm not talking directly to anybody. I'm just trying to put a soccer athlete in my brain. What I want to look for is ranges of motion and dynamics. And commonly what I see, I want to make sure that we can mobilize hips and hamstrings. And believe it or not, shoulders and upper body trunk as well. You know, I like to work on running mechanics so that we're fluidly moving this direction, right? Not across our bodies. You soccer players know exactly what I'm talking about. And then ankle strength as well. And I'm just looking at common injuries that I see across the board. Without getting too complicated, my 4 days would essentially be day 1 and day 3 would complement each other. Day 2 and day 4 would complement each other. So let's start with day 1 and day 3. So day 1 and day 3, I'm going to essentially describe them as fast and slow. So on my day 1 is going to be my speed day. So it's going to be fast. So on this day, I'm going to do a lot of my speed and agility work. For starters, I'm going to do a lot of my plyometric work. And then from there, I would probably do all of my auxiliary work. So it would be high-end speed and agility plyometric, and then I would get into my unilateral strength and my core work, right? And then I'll do mobility last. Mobility last when I'm finished and warmed up. So fast on day 1. On day 3, I'm going to work slow. So now this, I still want to reinforce those mechanics. I still want to reinforce lateral movement. But on this one, I'm going to do it through more deliberate effort and mental energy because I'm going to do more, let's call it traditional, right? So this would be an Olympic, which is still technically fast, but I want to complement this. I'm also putting this athlete in high school, okay? So just keep your reference point for your level. I'm going to do a strength, which is definitely going to be a squat. I'm going to do an auxiliary, which will most likely be in the lunge realm, multi-directional lunge realm, I would say. And then from there, I'm going to head into what we call our work capacity. So our work capacity for us is, you name it. If you've worked out here, you know what work capacity is. It's sleds, it's ropes, it's movement patterns that I will just call dumb, for lack of a better term, but that we can keep doing continuously for time and duration. So it basically is conditioning, if you want to call it that, but it's very non-traditional, traditional, and it's very non-linear. So I'm not really trying to track, well, you did 1,000 meters today, let's do 1,500 next week, let's do 2,000 in 3 weeks. I am trying to push a specific duration. So it might be for 10 minutes where we are doing X, Y, and Z going through a cycle for 10 minutes. You still get that conditioning kind of tempo, but it's hard enough where you have to take a break. So if you guys have ever come in here and pushed a sled, you know that you cannot push a sled for 10 minutes. So we are going to work for intervals within that work capacity, and that kind of helps with our underlying conditioning without doing inline running linear work. Because from my perspective, the more linear running inline stuff that we do, the more susceptible that that athlete is going to be to some kind of itis, whether it's tendonitis, Achilles, patellar, you name it. So there's a lot of stuff that goes around. Your athlete should not know his physical therapist better than he knows his strength coach. So I'll put that out there. And that is for all athletes. They should not know their physical therapist more than they know their strength coaches. If they do, find a solution, right? That's what I'm saying. That's me. I'm the solution. But there's a lot of solutions out there. It's not the physical therapist always. They need to be working on their strength training and conditioning. All right, it's my 2 pennies for strength coaching. So those are what my 2 lower body days look like, right? Now, you're thinking soccer player, right? Do I need a lot of upper body work? Well, yes, you do. And believe it or not, you get a lot of energy and you get a lot of force production from your upper body and from your arms. So in that regard, I definitely want to make sure that we are doing some dumbbell work, some core work, and I'm going to spell it out here in a second. Do we need to do traditional, straight bar incline presses and kind of, and again, I'll make the comparison where we're looking at the football world, American football, or you're looking at soccer, right? No, we traditionally don't need to put mass on upper bodies of our soccer players, but we absolutely need their arms and upper bodies to be strong. And I liken it more to the ability to transfer power, right? So when I'm sprinting, when I'm jumping, when I'm slowing down, when I'm cutting, I've got to use my arms, right? Go try and do a drill with your arms over your head or your hands behind your head. Just a little experiment. Go pick your favorite drill, I don't care what it is, and do it with your hands behind your head. It's really clunky and hard and not easy to do. And there are some drills that we do in here that actually we try and take your hands away and we'll do minus your hands. So that being said, that's what our day 2 and our day 4 would look like. So I also think of energy, right? So day 1 and 3 are lower body. So your legs suck up a lot more glucose out of your system. They suck up a lot more ATP. So we'll get into that into a future chapter, but those are the energy systems in your body, right? So that's how your body produces energy. That's how your muscles fire. And it's this kind of reset, recycle thing, okay? So pieces of that I want to combine into this program. So when you're using your lower body, you're using more of those substrates for fuel, which means by the time you get through 45 minutes of day 1, you should be out of blood sugar and you're going to be gassed, right? So you should be pretty fatigued and probably looking for something to eat because your blood sugar is nil. On day 2 and day 4, you might not be that way. Maybe on the first couple weeks, yeah, but day 2 and day 4, we're a little bit more dialed into upper body and core. So this is how I would set it up and this is how it would look. So it would still be complementary, meaning day 1 for me is fast, lower body. Day 3 is slow, lower body. So day 2 and day 4 would be complementary on the opposite ends of the schedule. But what I would describe them as is functional on day 2, and then day 4 would be strength. So again, if you think of functional, right, I think fast. And if I think of slow, I think strength. Now don't think slow like I'm gonna be slow. I just mean relative movement patterns, bar speeds, and stuff like that. I am not training athletes to be slow. But there is a point in time where we need to slow things down so that our brain can process and get more out of the exercise. So that's what those 2 days equate to me. On my functional day, I would still incorporate lower body work. We would be doing things, and I think of some of the simplest things that I can do to get your brains warmed up. I'd probably add a jump rope cycle to that day of some way, shape, or form. From there, I'm doing a lot of stuff out of plank and push-up position. So anything that I can do in plank and push-up and move through those exercises, that equates for me to more functional. I'm adding bands, med balls, and ropes to this day. Look, I realize we're not in a gym right now. I realize you don't have access to a gym, but one day you will, and that's okay. This ain't gonna last forever. So in my head, we're already through the quarantine and we are back into the gym. So I'm mentally prepping you to get there, right? We have built a plan that's all body weight. We have built an online training program that's all body weight. So we've solved that problem. What I'm trying to do is put you back into the mode of getting back into the gym and getting your mindset and heading into a season. So on my functional day, I'm jumping rope. I'm doing a lot of stuff out of plank and push-up position. I'm doing a lot of work with bands, med balls, and ropes. On this day, if I'm going to do anything that's running geared, I am going to add stairs to the mix. So I like to do stairs. I like to add stairs to training because, well, for a lot of reasons. Number one, I can get way more out of less. So when you're running at grade, you got to work at least twice as hard as running on flat ground, all right? So number one. Number two, when I'm running stairs, I reduce impact forces. So you're not constantly hitting that pavement in a flat vector, right? Or in a perpendicular vector where you're just hitting the ground. You're actually going up a flight of stairs. So every time you take a step, you should have the ability to land a little bit softer than as if you were landing on flat ground. And then the other piece is that the step is flat. So it actually will kind of help protect your Achilles and your arches. From my perspective as a coach, if I'm putting somebody on a grade, unless it's turf, right? So turf and grass will reduce impact forces, but it's still really hard and challenging. Let's just say it's asphalt, right? Because it's probably what most of us have accessibility to. So if it's asphalt and I'm sprinting up a hill on asphalt, you're really putting a large impact into the Achilles, because you're loading it up maximally and there's really minimal room for forgiveness. So the ball of your foot hits the asphalt, you're stuck in a shoe so you don't get as much splay on your toes, right? Your toes are supposed to splay when you're sprinting uphill. So I'm not going to get that when I'm stuck in a shoe and on asphalt. And then that impact force really can put some damage on your Achilles and your arch. So again, that's why I like the stairs. That's a long-winded answer to a really short, simple one, but preferably I'm looking at stairs. And then also with stairs, I can control volume and work sets and rest, right? So that's another big piece of the equation. So that's what my day 2 functional. So it's upper body, technically. It's total body, right? Let's not like mince around it. It's total body. You're using everything. When you're using rubber bands, you're in a push-up plank position, and you're doing different movements and battle ropes, med balls, you name it. We don't do anything in here where you are standing in place and doing something. Generally, rarely. So that's usually the case right here. So that'd be my day 2. Now my day 4, from there is again upper body, but it's strength. Now we probably get into some more traditional work, but by traditional, again, we like to do different sets and reps. So for example, I would probably we would build you a complex, and all a complex is be working with a kettlebell, it can be working with a straight bar, it can be working with a set of dumbbells, but it's a series of exercises that are tied together. We usually do them in sets of 5. So I'll give you a standard. I'm not saying this is what I would do for you, but this is what we would standardly do, or do as a standard for our dynamic warm-up. So I would have a straight bar with, say, 95 pounds on it. It's fairly light. And I would essentially do a set of deadlifts for 5. I would then go right into my hang clean for 5. I would do a push press for 5, and then I would hinge and row for 5. So it's a set of 20, right? So 4 sets of 5, but you're going from one to the next to the next to the next. So it's this big cycle, this big circuit. We usually use it as our warm-up. It's part of that day to kind of get our brains kicked on. I learned these a long time ago when I worked for the Browns, when I worked back in Cleveland. We used to do complexes all the time, but it was part of how we used to get our guys ramped up and moving. And basically, it kind of gets back to what we talked about with the sled pushes, right? So I don't really have to process doing a deadlift. I really don't have to process doing a hang clean, especially if it's 95 pounds. So it's something that I can do that's very light. And it's something that I can do to help kick my brain and my body on. So from there, I'd probably go into more traditional work, but I would do it in a non-traditional way. And we usually do that through supersets. We could almost call this day push, pull. So what does that mean? What does that look like? Push, pull, well, obviously it's pretty literal, but what does it look like? Let's say we're warmed up and we're moving in our 4th day. We like to do complementary exercises that work anterior, posterior as far as your body. And so anterior, I just mean everything in front, right? So if I'm going to cut you in half, down the middle, front to back, everything in front is anterior, everything in back is posterior. And so I'll give you a really easy example, right? So I'm just going to sit here and do a bicep curl. We would never sit down and do bicep curls. I'm just trying to make a crude example. Bicep curl, so that's all anterior, and then I would superset that with a tricep push down. That's all posterior. So that's how we would complement and kind of mesh 2 body halves together. So for example, we could easily do like a standing Arnold or military press, where I could be in a split stance position, where if I'm here, I can split stance, and I can do a little dip, load into the hips, and press up and over your head. So that's my push. And let's say I've got 25 pounders in my hands, and then I'm going to go right into my bent over row for a set of 10. So that could be an easy 1-2 combo that we use. So that does a couple of different things. It allows us to be really efficient with our sets and our reps. I'm not really a firm believer in kind of the old school, hey, let's sit down and do 3 sets of 12. I like to be really efficient with my time. I like to get, I would much rather work out for 40 minutes at a high intensity than, an hour and 40 minutes at a very low intensity, where I do a set of 10 and talk, do a set of 10 and rest, do a set of 10 and talk. And so, again, every day is not the same. I get it, but I want to be really efficient with my time. So I'm thinking about complementary stuff that I can do together to maximally get the most out of my time. And then on that day as well, again, a lot of it depends on how your body feels, but that could be another day, and I would argue that you probably just want to do like a warm down stretch, some mobility, and wrap it up. For the most part, we're not in a position right now where I want to think about adding conditioning to your day. I invariably will get the athletes, so there's this spectrum here, right? So I will write the best plan and somebody won't do it, or they'll do it once or twice a week. Or I'll write this plan and then you've got the athletes that want to work out 8 days a week. And from my perspective, less is more. So if you are not being challenged by this, then let's have a conversation and figure out what intensity level we're working at, figure out what level you're at right now. Because doing more is not necessarily the answer. It's working at a higher threshold. That is the answer. Specifically as it relates to improving your power and explosiveness, right? I'm not trying to improve your conditioning. I don't need you to run, X meters in a certain amount of time. That's not the position that we're in right now. Once you start getting into, holy shit, season's 6 weeks, 8 weeks away, okay, yeah, we're running a little bit late. We need to work on your conditioning and start to up that component. But right now, you need to be able to dial in, work at a specific intensity, make sure that what you're doing is sustainable. That's the other side of this, right? You get the athletes that want to work out every single day. Like, look, on some level, that's not sustainable. So it's at the end of the day, right? Trust the process. We say it all the time. Trust it. You can't get more out of less. You got to just keep plugging along and doing this. Trust me, there's always ways to modify. There's always ways to augment. So don't get through the first week and give me some shit like, wow, that was too easy. Number one, you're probably not working too hard. Number two, maybe you don't understand the intricacies of the exercises. In that regard, dude, call me, text me. Let's get together and figure out what's going on and how we can get more out of this. I can tell you that it takes some practice. And that is the biggest thing. It's like learning how to kick, learning how to throw. It's the same thing. It takes practice to learn how to get maximal volition out of your body. So, that's my take. That's my 2 pennies. That's how I'm going to organize 4 days. In an ideal world right now, I think most of our high school and college athletes have 4 days, which sucks in some regard because I realize it's quarantine and stuff like that. But also in the same breath, it gives you some lead time, right, to do some things that maybe you haven't tried before, to structurally start to think about how you're setting up your own workouts and what you're doing on your own. But also it gives you some insight into how we program, into how I structurally think about every single person that comes through this facility, right? So it's not a, lack of a better term, it's not a workout of the day. It is your plan. It is built specifically for you, for your goals, because that's what we do. Guys, that's all I got. I hope that you have enjoyed this. Now, 2 things before you go. On Thursday, we are going to be doing plyometrics. So we are going to break down, I would guess it's going to be a solid 30-minute video at least, but we're going to break down 2 different plyometrics exercises. Haven't decided on them yet. I'm still working what would visually be pretty cool, but also what is doable. Plus, I'm going to have aerial here, so I will have my own human kangaroo to jump around. Or maybe another special guest on top of that. I'm working on a few other coaches right now to bring on board our live stream on Thursday, so I'm going to put a little plug out there for that. And then we're going to continue this process. So next week is Anatomy of a Workout 103. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to try to get through 2 full days where I'm going to go day 1. So don't forget this shit. Day 1 and day 2, we're going to build. We're also going to build like we have a gym, right? So I'm going to build as simply as possible. You won't need a lot of stuff. I'm also anticipating the gym opening up sometime in May. So let's keep our fingers crossed. Better open up in May, or I will just open it up anyway. So I think from that perspective, putting that in your heads, that's what we're mentally going to try and accomplish here for the next 2 weeks. We got a couple plyos that we're going to dissect and break down on Thursday. We're going to then dig in back into our anatomy of a workout next Monday. So we'll cover day 1 and day 2. And we are just going to keep building and putting out good content. In the meantime, if you all have any questions on either side and or anything that I did not cover or you were not sure about, or you're like, dude, this would be really cool to cover, now's your time, right? Now's your time to submit that shit because we have free time. And so maybe we'll start doing these more often and there'll just be more information out there, right? So right now it's on Monday and Thursday. Give me a reason to go Monday through Thursday and I'll do it, all right? But it's up to you. Outside of that, guys, have a great Monday afternoon. It's time for dinner. Let's go eat. Thank you.